degenerate and knowing who was degenerate was a central aspect of medical science, biological science, and anthropological science. If you were a physician, you had all sorts of signs and symptoms that you looked for. It was the shape of their ears, the size of their nose, whether they gazed at you in a certain way. So it meant if you didn't look the right way, you're obviously a deviate from the norm, and therefore you're also obviously mad. You're crazy.
It was a celebration of Aryan ideals, of racially pure women and men.
The art must be elevated. It must be classical. I suppose you could say, yeah, it's bulls and Greeks and naked broads. What it has on its side is a certain kind of technical virtuosity, which is undeniably there, and which people certainly found attractive. And, you know, I dare say people still do.
Through it all, Emil Nolde remained a loyal party member, attacking other artists, calling them half-breeds, bastards, and mulattoes, and extolling the natural superiority of Nordic peoples.
There's no contradiction between being a fascist and being an artist. I'm sorry, but there isn't. It happens that not very many good artists have been Nazis. It's not surprising, actually, that Nolde was such an early party member, because the Nazis, too, believed in blood and race and soil and the primitive and the truth of the peasant and all the rest of it. What is slightly more surprising is the vehemence with which the party later turned on.
All the arts were affected. Films like this one by Laszlo Moholy-Nagy were banned. Abstraction was strictly forbidden. In music, atonality, dissonance, any deviation from classical tradition was not permitted. Paul Hindemith, Alban Berg, and this piece by Arnold Schoenberg were labeled degenerate. All forms of modern music were ridiculed. Jazz was attacked and viciously parodied in so-called degenerate music exhibitions. One former jazz musician remembers that the Nazis prohibited all mutes, which turned the noble sound of wind and brass instruments into a Jewish Freemasonic howl. Hitler resolved to create a new culture for the new Reich. There was no place for the sensitive or troubled soul. A steady stream of propaganda infiltrated daily life. The very first Nazi public building project was to be a museum in Munich. Hitler called it the House of German Art and spent hours over the most minute details of its design.
You really want to look at the two sides of the coin of what is war. Look at the Nazis and look at the Expressionists, and you find out who is who. The German Expressionists were all against the war. There was not an Expressionist who was not against the war.
One of the things that made the propaganda work was the spectacle of the other. It was the ability to hold up a painting of a distorted head with its mouth going like that, and its eyes goggling at you, all in weird colours, and say, if you don't believe in our kind of culture, this is what you're going to get. The avant-garde had always hoped to be dangerous. That is the thing. The guys with the armbands were paying a kind of supreme compliment, even in the act of repressing it. They were saying, this really matters. This really counts in the way that people react to one another and the way in which states are formed. This is language, and it affects daily life.